Album Surfin' Safari. Before I talk about the album, I'm just going to talk a little bit about like how I got into the Beach Boys and stuff. So it would have been like 2009, I think, probably spring of 2009. I've been in my Beatles phase for a long time at this point, and I had got all their albums and I'd listened to them for quite a bit, and because I went for a long time, I went through like phases, and I still kind of do, I guess. Like I'll get really into a band, and I'll get all their albums, and that's like mainly what I'll listen to for a while. And so yeah, I was in this like Beatles phase, and I guess that like I kind of knew who the Beach Boys were. I had heard some of their hits. Like I think I was pretty familiar with like Surfin' USA, Surfin' Safari. I know I had heard like Wouldn't It Be Nice and Good Vibrations stuff. I'd heard a lot of their songs before, and I knew who they were, but I wasn't really super into any of the songs yet. But I read some reviews on them, and I'd kind of read some stuff about, I guess, like their kind of general place in music history and things like that. And I ended up like watching a documentary on them, I think, and thought it was really interesting. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna check out, just like get one of their albums and listen to it. So I went to a Walmart with my aunt and uncle one day, and it was in this like random town in Ohio. I can't even remember where it was. It was somewhere near like Amish country, where like all the Amish people live in Ohio. It was somewhere like up in there, which is like not where I'm from, but we were up there for some reason. And anyway, we went to this Walmart. And the only album I could find was this one. It wasn't this copy, it wasn't vinyl, it was a CD, so I bought it. And so this was my first Beach Boys album, not, like I said, not this particular copy. But I listened to it for quite a while, because honestly back then, like, I couldn't find anything but Beach Boys' greatest hits in stores, and then like Pet Sounds I eventually found, but like all my Beach Boys albums I pretty much had to buy offline. There was a point where they did like some reissues that I saw, but it wasn't like any of the CDs that I have. So I started kind of rambling. So I ended up just getting like super into the band at that point and buying like every album that they had. Actually, I didn't buy like all their albums right away. There's actually like a couple of their albums I didn't get until recently, because I kind of had a cutoff point with their albums where like I didn't want to listen to them anymore, and we'll get to that towards the end of their career. But anyway, so in the beginning of the Beach Boys, there was this album, Surfin' Safari. So it was released in, I didn't write that down, did I? I think it was, pretty sure it was 1962. Might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it's released in 1962. The production credit goes to Nick Vinay, but I think the sound of the album has more to do with the engineer Chuck Britz, probably, and then the Beach Boys like manager Murray Wilson and Brian himself. But I guess I should probably go in a little bit into the Beach Boys like lineup and some of that stuff, since this is their first album, and if you're not familiar with it. So the basic band consists of brothers Brian, Dennis, and Carl Wilson, and they all, like, pretty much everyone in the band sings. I think there might be like one exception to that, like kind of later in the band's history, but anyway, kind of rambling. So Brian plays bass for the most part. Like it's kind of their instrument stuff gets confusing too, because there's a lot of stuff they don't play on later. But there's Brian bass, Dennis drums, Carl's lead guitar, and then Mike Love, their cousin's vocalist. Sometimes he plays saxophone, like barely ever, but kind of like early on he does. Then the rhythm guitar spot on these early albums is a little bit confusing, because there's a friend of Brian's, I think that they went to high school together, named Al Jardine, and he was, I think, in that spot like originally, but he quit right before they like recorded any albums or anything because he wanted to go to school to be a dentist or something. And he was replaced by Dave Marks, who was, I think, their neighbor and was friends with Carl and played guitars with Carl. So he's on the first 4 albums, and then he quit and Al came back. But then there's also, like, I think Al played bass on like a couple of their early albums while Brian played like keys on the tracks. So it's like they're kind of both on some of the stuff still, but like, I don't know. So anyway, kind of rambling there, but that's at least kind of my understanding of the kind of early like lineup of the band. I mean, there's other people that probably know the story better than me, so I'm sure I'll get comments like, you're wrong about this, but you know, whatever. So as far as this album goes, I got Surfin' Safari kind of late because I had read that it wasn't that great, and I mean that's sort of true. This copy, I bought it in 2011 in Berlin, Germany. I was there for a college trip. I went to a CD store or like a record store, and I found it. So I was like, well, I can never find this CD at home, so I'll just buy it here. And anyway, had to wait till I got home to listen to it because I didn't have any CD player or anything with me while I was there. I just had an iPod, but I didn't have a laptop or anything to put it on. So as far as the album itself goes, it's really kind of early in their career. I mean, they were really young when they made this, and it's like the early 60s, so a lot of the songs are like really naive sounding and stuff. But like, I can't stress how like young the band was. I think the oldest member was Mike, and he was like 20 or something, so they were super young when they recorded this. So I kind of can give it a little bit of a pass for some of the like corniness and stuff to it. Because this is, I don't know, it's just music by like super young people at a different time. But the first song on the album, Surfin' Safari, written by Brian and Mike, is probably the best song on the album. Really, probably the one that it's kind of most famous for. I think it was yeah, it was like the only song off here that was on that Greatest Hits album, but it's a good song. Kind of shows really what the early band's all about and what their early sound is. Just a cool surf rock song. Not really one of my favorites of theirs. Like not really much of the songs on this album even would like register on my favorites of theirs, just because the stuff that comes later is so much better. But there's some cool stuff on here, and it is them playing like their instruments on this album as compared to like later on Pet Sounds, where it's mostly session people. So it is kind of cool to hear what they sounded like as a band. The second song, County Fair, written by Brian Wilson and Gary Usher, who I've mentioned Gary Usher on this channel before. He produced some of the Byrds albums. I think Younger Than Yesterday, Notorious Bird Brothers, and Sweetheart of the Rodeo. He was the producer for, which some of my favorite Byrds albums, and I like his production on there a lot. Actually, like his production, like him as a producer a lot better as a co-writer for Brian, really. But I don't think it's his fault. I think it's just they were all so young and like the time it was and stuff like that. But this song it's really cheesy. I do kind of like the music to it, and like the vocal parts, like it's just got these really, the lyrics are really corny, and it's got these really cheesy like I don't know, like a fair like Barker kind of voice, and then like the like there's like character voices kind of, and like some bands I don't know how I feel. Some bands pull off sound effects well in songs, and some bands don't and stuff. And this is kind of a, I think, an example where it doesn't really work. It just makes the song cheesy, but I don't know. It's not like super horrible, but it's not great. The third song, 10 Little Indians, which I think was a single, but I think it only made it to like 49 or something. But it's another Brian Wilson, Gary Usher song, and I'm pretty sure it's like pretty racist, or would be considered pretty racist now. It's not really a great song. The only thing about it that I really like is I think it's got a pretty cool guitar solo from Carl, but other than that, not really much good to say about it. The fourth song, Chug-a-Lug, was written by Brian, Mike, and Gary Usher. This one I actually kind of like. It's kind of cheesy because it's about root beer, but at the same time, some of the lyrics, like they mention things about each band member's personality, which is kind of cool. Gives you an idea of who each one of them kind of were at that point or whatever, or what they might have been into. And it's just, I don't know, I think that the vocals are good, they play it pretty good. Like, I think it's a pretty cool song. Not like something great, but it's especially, I don't know, it's an interesting song for how it shows the band at the time. The fifth song, Little Girl, You're My Miss America, is a cover. It's Dennis Wilson's first lead vocal for the band, and I'm a big fan of Dennis as a songwriter and as a singer. And he was kind of probably the most limited vocalist of the band, but at the same time, I think that he, in a lot of ways, sang with kind of the most like emotion and the most feeling. Like whenever he sings, it definitely sounds like he really feels what he's saying. And this song for me, I like it because it's interesting, especially to hear him sing that young, because his voice changed over the career of the band, which is kind of a theme with these guys, or at least with the Wilson brothers. Not so much Carl, but like Brian and Dennis's voices definitely get a lot like rougher as the band goes on because of the various like substances and stuff that they were using. But it's weird to hear like how young he sounds on the song, but it's pretty cool, and I like it. The sixth song, 409, was written by Brian, Mike, and Gary Usher. Car song. This one I think is another one of the kind of better songs on the album. Kind of one of the more standout songs, but the car sounds in it kind of, I think, are a little cheesy. The seventh song, Surfin, was by Brian and Mike, and this I think was kind of like the first song they really wrote, and like maybe the first thing they recorded, and it sounds just like really, it sounds like a lot less produced really than the rest of the songs on the band. I think on the album, I mean. I think the first time, I'm not sure if it's this way on the recording, but I heard that like the first time they recorded it, Brian was just like tapping his finger on a snare drum for the drums. So I'm not sure if that's what they did for this one, but it does kind of sound like that, like really stripped down. And it's fine. It's kind of cool for like the first song that they wrote about surfing, which was Dennis's suggestion, by the way. I think he was the only surfer in the group. The eighth song, Heads You Win, Tails I Lose, written by Brian and Gary Usher. I like this one. The lyrics are kind of goofy, but I think the singing's really good from Brian. And I think that actually I really like the drums on the song for some reason. I think Dennis gives a good performance on that one. The ninth song, Summertime Blues, is a cover. And it's pretty good. It's not my favorite version of that song, but it's not bad or anything. Or wait, not Brian. Brian doesn't sing Heads You Win, Tails You Lose. I was thinking of a different song. I don't know why I said Brian. Or does he sing that one? I can't remember. But the song I meant to talk about there was this song that's coming up, and I think that I don't know, I'm tired. I just got off work, so I'm confusing what I wrote down. I listened to this album last night, and I tried to record the video then, and it wasn't coming together, so I gave up and put it off. Anyway, the 10th song, Cuckoo Clock, another Brian Wilson, Gary Asher song, and this is actually one of the ones I like more on the album, and I just think it's really catchy. It's got kind of strange lyrics again, but this is the one where Brian's singing on it. I think is really good. I don't know, it's a cool song, but the lyrics are kind of silly. The 11th song, Moondog, is an instrumental, and it's kind of a fine surf instrumental. Like I said, it's cool to hear them playing their instruments. I think that, I don't know, I just think it's that they're maybe a little bit underrated is maybe like not the right word, but I don't think enough people realize that they actually like could play, and I think that they do pretty well, especially for how new most of them were to the instruments at the time. And the 12th song, The Shift, written by Brian and Mike, just kind of weird like lyrically. I kind of like some of the guitar stuff in it, but it's just kind of a weak way to close the album. So, I mean, it's not a long album. It doesn't have a whole lot to like really highly recommend on it, but definitely is like a historical piece. It's interesting, worth a listen. It's got some stuff on it that I like. Like if I was making a playlist of like all my favorite Beach Boys songs, I'd probably put Surfin' Safari. I'd put Little Miss America because it's the Dennis's first single or lead vocal. I'd probably put all the Dennis vocals on. I put I don't know, 409 and probably Cuckoo Clock. So yeah, it's got like a few songs on it that I like quite a bit and that I listen to pretty often, but a lot of it I don't really listen to a lot. Honestly, I'd probably give it I don't think I could really give it higher than a 2 out of 5 because it just doesn't have. It's an album that's just kind of pretty mediocre, but it's got some good stuff on it, and I don't know if I don't know, the first 2 albums just don't really kind of capture a lot of the like brilliance that's to come later. I mean, they show like little glimpses of it here and there, but it's just not quite there yet.